We live for PRs. This is what Essex Vaulting Poles is all about. If you've been to any meets lately, you've probably noticed a large number of yellow poles, and a lot of them are making the podium. Essex has changed the way poles are designed. Engineered by joining carbon and glass, they've engineered a pole that is smaller in diameter, lighter to carry, and more durable. Essex vaulting poles are trusted by many of the world's greatest athletes and coaches to help them get over the bar. If you want to learn more or get a grip on some of these poles, head over to www.ust-essex.com to find your local dealer. I followed you guys a lot whenever I was younger. You guys were part of that 2000s like Neo Vault era, so we got to watch you guys on Neo Vault and follow, not as much as we can follow people now for sure, but I kept close tabs on both of you and really enjoyed watching your careers. But I don't know. I know more about Jeremy's background because I was a Division III pole vaulter.
E3, baby.
Yeah. and he was an outstanding, you've got to still be the record holder at 570 or something, right?
I think so.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I didn't even know your name, to be honest with you. My dad coached at North Central College, and we just referred to you as Allegheny. That was and literally I would like come to the workout and they'd be like, did you hear Allegheny jump 560? I'm like, you guys got to figure this guy's name out, man. Like, we can't just call him
That's
Allegheny
awesome.
the whole time.
Don't feel too bad. Some of one of my training partner's brothers didn't know my real name either. He just always knew me as El Grande, and it took probably about 3 or 4 months before somebody called me by my real name. And he's like, wait, that's you?
That's hilarious. And then
John Ryland.
Tye, Ryland, yeah. And then Tye, I know you from having just one of my favorite vaults to watch. I just really enjoyed watching your vault and how you put it all together. Yeah. But I don't know much about you guys' background. So I don't know. Why don't we start with Tye and then just a quick synopsis? Because I can already tell that this is probably going to be one that goes for a really long time. So, like, where did you start? Your kind of path through, to where you're at now.
Yeah, much like a lot of pole vaulters, and especially, I think maybe some congruency with Toby Stevenson. I grew up on a ranch, a cattle ranch, but instead of in the oil fields of West Texas, I was in the Sierra Nevadas in California, kind of by Yosemite National Park. It is like, yeah, it's a beautiful spot. I grew up in a little mountain community called Sonora, and that whole little mountain town. It's gold mining is the history in that area, and like they still have state parks that are, like old timer, mining communities that where you go as a tourist and you get to dress up and see how they used to mine gold and all that stuff. Yeah, so my dad is a cattle rancher, and he's like the old school kind of cattle rancher. Does everything horseback, and like where Toby would say, his dad is one of the smartest people he knows in the world. I would say my dad is one of the toughest people I know in the world, and he always had like bleeding body parts and broken bones, and he would continue on with daily life like it was just normal, and would never complain. Like, so tough. Anyway, yeah, that's my background. I grew up in a small town in Northern California on a cattle ranch.
Cattle ranch, right on. And Jeremy?
I'm from Norfolk, Nebraska, just a little town in the northeast corner. And um, kind of listening to those stories, it's crazy. And I know you and your dad are really close. It's just kind of crazy the influence a dad could have on a kid's life. But I also look up to my dad. He was a mechanic, and he owned his own shop, and that's kind of how I got into. I didn't realize it at the time, but my love for mechanics and figuring out how things work and how to fix stuff, I think, is what really kind of sparked my interest in orthopedics, which is what I'm doing now. But hardworking family, and then it was tough, but going out to Allegheny, out to Pennsylvania was tough to leave, but I think pretty important um, for me to kind of grow and develop into my own person and get away. And, um, but, I mean, that's kind of I guess the background. I mean, not much. I think one of the big stories is that I went to, went to college, actually chose Allegheny originally to play football. Um, I was going to go to South Dakota. My sister went there the same time Derek Miles did, and so he was a big influencer to me early on as far as my pole vault career. But I was going to go play football there, and the offensive coordinator took the head coaching job at Allegheny, which is why I originally went out to Pennsylvania.
How
So
high
things
did you
kind of
vault in high school?
not very high by today's standards, 15.2.
Yeah, by today's
Which
standards, everybody didn't vault high.
no, I mean it's just crazy. But like I was the Nebraska state champ my senior year, and I kind of thought that was the way I was going to leave my pole vaulting career. I thought I was going to just leave it on a win and
Right.
just go play football. And I knew at that point I kind of wanted to do something in the medical field, and thought that um, the opportunity to go to Allegheny in a different part of the country with different scenery and different faces, and to go play football and kind of get me set to go to medical school afterwards.
Right. Right. And Ty, how high did you go in high school?
My senior year, I jumped 520.
Holy cow. Okay.
Geez,
Yeah, that's
stud.
legit. Yeah, for real. See, but like you're part of a California that like everybody, whenever people from where I'm from and where Jeremy's from think about California, maybe like it's like beach and like, just the California surfer vibe type thing. But like that Yosemite area that's a different, like that's a different part of California.
Yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, the weather is different. I mean, I was on our ski team, right? Like, and
Wow.
I taught snow skiing at our little hill, right, 30 minutes from our house, called Dodge Ridge. Actually, it's fun. I got to take my kids the last 2 Christmases. We've gone back to the ranch. I've got to take my kids to the same hill I learned how to ski on and taught skiing to the little ski wee guys, the little kids. I got to teach my kids. It was like
That's
super
cool.
fun. Yeah, super fun. Yeah,
Where
very different.
did you guys have like a lot of like resources and equipment? Like, cause I'm thinking of Yosemite, like, so you're from Sonora. So Yosemite, like that's pretty far out there, right? Is it like a pretty, I don't want to say desolate, but just like kind of just a way away from everything?
Yeah, it's in the foothills in the sticks, but um, okay. So resources. So that's an interesting word. There's
As
human
far as
resources. There's
pits
yeah.
and stuff.
So in terms of pole vault supplies, we had like horrible, like next to nothing, like Toby Stevenson level, stuff. Yeah, I mean he says it so well, like that whole evolution of how he became a pole vaulter it really rings true with me. Like we had very little resources, but we had, in terms of people who cared a lot about the community and the kids, we had like just a never ending supply of people who would put all their energy and effort into helping kids like me at that time. So we had a cinder track. We had a dirt track. I ran that's my kind of claim to fame. I ran a 49 on a cinder track, right? A 49 400, which I
Wow.
was really
Jeez.
proud of.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do on a cinder track. And I was like, oh, but I didn't run, I didn't, pole vault takes so long, right? Like you start at the beginning of the meet and you're the last people on the track and it's dark and everybody's gone, or, that's how the pole vault rolls in high school. And especially, as you have a disparity in the level of athlete, right? You have like these 6-footers and 7-footers starting to meet, and then they're going up by 3-inch increments. And then
Right.
you have a 16 or 17 footer in the meet, and it takes a long time. So I didn't get to do all the other events like I really wanted to. But we had, in terms of like coaches, in high school, like Jim Rober, our head coach, he cared a lot about what he did and just dumped his life into the kids. And he was also an English teacher and really smart man. And then Adam Stratton, this guy. So I'm at the track. I didn't have a coach, like a pole vault specific coach. My freshman year, I'm out there just jumping and trying to figure it out we had 2 poles. Like we had like a yellow catapult. It was like a 15-foot pole and 160, and a blue or black cat that was like I don't know, something that didn't bend. And I was like straight poling. I remember my freshman year just trying to figure it out. And I jumped, I don't know, probably like 9-10 feet or something like that. And then my sophomore year, first part of track season, I'm out there trying to do it again. And this guy, Adam Stratton, shows up, and he like comes up, this little like bubbly, happy go lucky kind of guy, young man. And he like comes over to the runway and he goes, "Hey man, I know how to pole vault. Do you have a coach?" And I'm like, "No, I don't have a coach." And he's like, "Well, do you want me to help you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And so Adam Stratton was jumping for Coach Fraley at Fresno State. And he was with that whole crew of guys like Jimmy Jack Drath and Derek Slick was down there, and Frank Burke, I think, was there, and maybe Dave Cox era, like right in that, I think Dave was a little younger, but like right in that era. And apparent, sorry, I'm getting a call. Let me just end this for a second. How do I send a voicemail? Yeah. So, So then Adam, he starts coaching me, and he was 22 years old at the time. And I was like, 15. And we became fast friends. And then like the whole high school experience really changed for me, because he and I every day would do something related to pole vault. Usually not pole vault, but like pool vaulting. In the summer, literally almost every single day, we would pool vault at his aunt and uncle's house and just like try to throw backflips and gainers and like just smack the water and keep going. And we'd go, growing up in the mountains, we had tons of like rivers with big high cliffs, and we'd go cliff jumping like almost every day in the summer. We would always be doing something. And then like he became an assistant coach at the high school, so he had all the keys, right? So at like 10 o'clock at night, we would, on school nights even, we would get the keys and go to the rec gym and set up. They had these old trampolines for old style gymnastics, where they'd run down a runway and hit this tramp, and they would do flips and stick it like kind of like the horse, but it was on a trampoline. And we'd set that up in front of the basketball goals, and we'd be doing flips and slamming. We'd put pads out, and it would be
awesome.
Oh, it'd be incredible. Like he and I, and then we'd set up gymnastics equipment. This was before like they outlawed all that stuff, right? And you had to now you got to have coaches and all the appropriate stuff. But we would set up the high bars and the parallel bars in the gym with nobody but he and I blasting, Van Halen, and just go to work. And it wasn't work; it was super fun, and we would just play till midnight. And then we, go to school the next day and do it again. And that's what my whole high school career was basically like. I kind of missed out on some of the like standard high school experiences because I was so just immersed in this moment and this world of just experiencing your body in space and time in so many different ways. We would rock climb and I started paragliding and just all this stuff. Yeah. So I'll let Grande go. I'm taking too much time.
Well, really quick before we do that, where did you go to college? I should know that, but I don't.
University of Minnesota.
I knew that. Okay. I really did know that. I swear. I just needed to be reminded of it. Yeah, that's interesting that you went from California to the University of Minnesota, but that worked out well for you. So Grande goes to Allegheny and pops off at Allegheny. So you were gonna originally play football and you were planning to not pole vault?
Yeah. Yep. I really thought that my track career was done when I
That's crazy.
I left. I mean, we have like the Cornhusker State games in the summer, and that was like, I didn't even pole vault then. I went and just wanted to try high jumping and triple jumping one time. And I don't remember what I did, but I wanted to go do it. But that was like the last time I thought I was ever going to pole vault. I was like, what a great way to end on a state championship.
Right.
Um, and went out there. I really did. Football is still probably my favorite sport to play. I miss it a lot. But it's even at that smaller level, um, it's just a different game from high school. I mean, you're up early for meetings, you meet together at lunch for meetings, you have practice. By the time you're done with getting through the training room and practice and afterwards and going to watch film in the evening and studying the playbook, like at a pretty tough academic school. Like I was, as a freshman, just and being far away from home, I was just pooped. Like I was kind of done. And this is the honest to goodness truth. Like the reason that I ended up um, going back out for track, one of our running backs was a sprinter on the track team, and they found out that I'd pole vaulted, and it was a little school, so like the school record was it's only like 13.9 or 14.2, something really
At
low
Allegheny?
at Allegheny.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
and we also at that point had a cinder track. Now it's a really nice track, but
Yeah.
he was like, hey, like you should come out, like you could break the school record, you could win conference, and he's like, and then like I was like, yeah, whatever, not a big deal. And then he's like, the selling point was if you go out for track, you don't have to do the 5 a.m. workouts in the spring
Oh.
for football. And I was like, no way. Got it. Yes. Like, okay. Like that was so it's crazy that something so good turned out really kind of out of my own laziness or desperation of not
That's
wanting to get up at
hilarious.
that early. And I mean, at that point, still, I mean, I grew about an inch every year in in college still.
And then
Um,
how tall are you? Because the people are probably like, why do they call him Grande? How
so my official height is 6'9 3/4.
there we
And so
go.
so when I got to college, I was about 6'6", and then grew 6'7" at the end of my freshman year, 6'8", 6'9" as at the end of my junior, and grew still like 3/4 of an inch as a senior. And so like I was just not the same person. I mean, almost from year to year as far as physically. And so by the end of even at limited resources, we ended up getting some polls by the end of my freshman year, and I ended up getting second at nationals and jumped 16.2 or 3. And then actually had a stress fracture. I broke my foot playing football my sophomore year, but I got second again with 16.9 or 10. But coming from a short run, I think 12 steps. And then my junior year, just like things really started to catch up. I jumped 18.3 as a junior, and then 18.8 indoors of my senior year, and then had a hamstring injury that I didn't compete outdoors. So
Oh, okay. So I have always been under the assumption that you were just like, this D3 is not good enough for me. I'm done. I need to get out of here. And then you went to Arkansas. So there was
yeah,
actually
I
an
don't like to bring
injury.
that up. Yeah, I hurt my hamstring, and my time at Arkansas, I did meet a few good people, but not not my favorite experience there.
Is that right?
Um, yeah, I
Yeah, I know
oh,
about
it's
that.
a
I went to Alabama my freshman year of high school or
mhm.
of college. Um, and I was just like, it just wasn't, for me. And, that's something that I think is a good thing for kids to understand. Because there's this whole divisions thing, like, Division 3 and Division 2 and Division 1. And uh they think maybe the grass is always greener on the other side, at that maybe bigger Division 1 school or whatever, but it's not always the case.
No, and I mean, a lot of my dissatisfaction there went back to the academic stuff. There was a lot of personal stuff there too as well, but I couldn't believe the difference in the support and, being the big fish in the small pond, even from the track and field side, like how much Allegheny would go out of the way to make me successful. And that goes in the classroom and track and field, the mentorship from professors, and the way they would kind of work things around to make sure I was able to meet all my goals. And it just wasn't like that at Arkansas.
Yeah, that was the exact same thing for me. I went to Alabama, was like, it was like all of a sudden, and Tye, I don't know if it was similar at Minnesota. I don't know how big University of Minnesota is, but I would be in lecture halls of like 800 people. And I was like, hold on, this is the class? Like, this is insane. Like, I was just like, it was like a concert, for a class. And I was like, there's not a chance in this world of me ever even meeting that guy, who was the professor, and then I transferred to North Central, and I transferred, this is embarrassing to say, but I transferred with 16 of my 32 credits at Alabama transferred, because I just did so terribly down there. It was embarrassingly bad. But I got to North Central, and this lady was like, hey, I'm going to do a private study with you. It's going to be me and you, and this is going to count as a credit, and you just got to come in. And it was like one-on-one just to help me get back on track. And it's because it's smaller schools, more manageable. And I was like, wow, that's pretty crazy. How big is University of Minnesota whenever you were there, Tye?
Yeah, so at the time it was the largest or second largest. It would like kind of bounce back and forth between like an Ohio State. Yeah, it was like in the top 5 for sure, largest schools in the country. It was massive. Like, I don't know, 65,000 student body. It was or some massive school. And it's split on 3 different campuses. So the Mississippi River, believe it or not, Mississippi River splits the campus on the west side, which is kind of the sciences. No, sorry, the east side, which is kind of the sciences and academic side. And then the west campus was the art campus, and then St. Paul, which was a short bus ride away or a bike ride away. Yeah, I have great memories of like on the bus route where buses could only go on this road. It was like a thoroughfare for buses. I would get on my bike and I'd draft. And I remember one time the bus driver stopped and pulled over, and I'm like, oh, it's funny, I don't remember this stop being here. So like I slow down and I stop behind the bus, and it just stays there. And it's got like a bus full of people. And I'm like, what's going on? And he gets off the bus and walks back and politely told me to not draft anymore. So that was the end of my drafting career. But yeah, huge campus, massive student body. You bump it, you never see anybody. Like, again, Econ 101, 1,000 people, right? In this huge auditorium, and you're watching a movie screen, and it's a 7 a.m. class, and it's just horrible. Like, why would you ever want to do that? But I will say the athletic program was amazing. So the reason I went to Minnesota was because of a guy named Phil Lundeen, who was the jumps coach, the pole vault coach, and assistant coach, and another guy named Roy Griak. And it's not because they were exceptional coaches, which Roy had a heck of a track record, pun intended, both in cross country and track, in like middle distance and distance, and just an amazing man with an amazing life. I miss him, but Phil really didn't have like the pedigree of a pole vault coach, but he was so great to talk to, and so like engaged and like deeply passionate and caring, and would provide. He's like, man, I'll observe and I'll do the best I can. I don't know much about the pole vault, but I will get you every resource you need to jump as best you can. And he did. He really, and they have great facilities, like beautiful outdoor and beautiful indoor, like cool place. And so I, coming from a small town in California, and knowing kind of how Californians are really California centric. Yeah, they used to be, at least. I haven't been there in a long time, so I don't.
Yeah, right,
and it's like
a little different.
Well, like, yeah, it is. The whole thing is a lot different. But but at that point, like nothing better than California existed in
Yeah.
my little pod of people. And I'm like, well, I mean, how do you know that? Like, where have you been and what have you done? You know, and
Right.
I never got a clear answer. So I kind of wanted to go somewhere I knew nothing about and just explore, like, well, what's out there. And it started like the journey through the Midwest for me. You know,
Yeah.
I went from the West Coast to Minnesota, where I met like a crazy slew of people that are still my closest friend, like some of my closest friends, right? Through track, but also just academics. And, you know, I like the Stevens brothers, Marty and Dan and Lori and Jason Rathie. I mean, Booner, Michelik, Bobby Johnson, all these guys, you know, like I can just go on and on with the memory of, and these guys taught, I wasn't very academic, right? I still am not super academic. I have a poor memory and I'm not that, you know, just academically inclined. However, these guys taught me, because you're in these classes with like 1,000 people, right? Like
Right.
you don't learn anything in class. And I wasn't a good reader, so I didn't read much. And so these guys would take the time to help me learn what I needed to know and like really explore the academic side of school. And if it wasn't for them, like I still couldn't talk and write. You know, at least I can hack my way through life. But these guys are really responsible for that. And just great thinkers. Like I gravitated toward this group of people who were thinkers, and it actually fits with the pole vault really well. A guy named Martin Erickson was at the University of Minnesota, and he was jumping in the mid 18s. And like I met a whole. That's the other cool thing about Minnesota was they could import all the foreigners like from
Yeah.
Scandinavia because it was
Right.
cold all the dang time, and
Yeah.
nobody else wanted to go. So like we had gosh, like Benjamin Jensen, who was the world junior decathlon champion at the time. We had Glenn Lindquist, who was also a decathlete. We had Stefan Strand, who was a high jumper, like one of the best in the world at the time. Like tons of like foreign. And as it turns out, like this was just an added benefit. In the summers, they'd be like, well, we're going home to compete and you can come over and stay with us. And so like my
That's
first
awesome.
experience,
Yeah.
oh, it was incredible. Like I would get on these like C circuit meets, you know, and get to compete in front of stadiums and people in Europe. And it was like, and I met like Patrick Christensen and like Renz Bloom and Lars Bergling. All these Europeaners were there, and I got to meet and just become part of their family. And
That's awesome.
Minnesota was a great kind of, yeah, just I don't know, it just like, you know, whatever it
It's
is.
just odd. Like I would not have pictured somebody like going from California to Minnesota. I mean, nothing against it. I just like, I feel like that's just a different, unique transition. You know, usually you go the opposite way. You go from Minnesota to California, you know, like,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I just find it fascinating that you were like, yeah, I'm going to go from California to Minnesota. And then you made it work, and it worked out for you. That's pretty cool.
I remember the recruiting trip. It was in the spring, and I was like, "Ooh, it's like 20 degrees. Like this is as cold as it must get." You know, so
Oh
naive,
man.
right? And I'm like, "Man, it's freezing," but the sun was out, and you know, the snow on the ground was like melting, and I'm like, "Okay, I can handle this." That was kind of a big concern. And
My brother lives in Minneapolis, and he was like, dude, I got, 24 inches of snow coming my way in the next, 12 hours or something. I was like, it's like,
yeah,
it just gets so cold. Like, he'll be
yes.
like, yeah, like wind chills like -40, and like it's like next level stuff. In
So
Chicago it gets cold too, but it
yeah.
doesn't get that cold.
Well, it gets really windy, of course, in Chicago with that wind. But
Yeah.
Minneapolis. So my freshman year, Grande, you could maybe look this up while we're talking. This is phenomenal. Like we had record-breaking low temperatures my freshman year. I remember being in the dorm on the third story and having a cup of water, open the window and like chuck the cup of water out. And before it hits the ground, it's like ice. It's like turning into little snowflakes.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, God, I want to say it was like, 30 below. without wind chill. That was like straight temperature,
Oh
30
yeah.
below. And I come,
Yeah.
you know, like the coldest I had ever experienced in the mountains in California was like 20, you know.
Right. Right.
And for those who say,
Does it get that cold in that mountain range? Like up towards the top? Like does it get below zero up there?
oh yeah, it will. Yeah. At the higher
Okay.
elevations, it definitely gets below zero. We would take my dad, again, my dad's old school, right? So in the summers, one of my jobs was at a pack station. It's called Kennedy Meadows. It's up in the Yosemite area.
Yeah, I know
And
Kennedy Meadows.
oh, you
I know
do?
that. I know the area. I'm fascinated with that area, like the John Muir Trail and like all
Yeah.
that goes to. I'm a big backpacker, and it's one of my trips that I want to take someday. So
Well, hit me up before you do that and we'll talk.
yeah,
But
for sure. Yeah, I would love to.
I, I explored all that country in high school. I would pack, like, you know, the owner of that place, Willie Ritz, was a really good friend, and they went to high school together with my dad. And my dad owned a pack station in Bear Valley at that time before I was born. And anyway, so long history of horses and packing mules and stuff. So in
Right.
high school, I would pack a lot of these like corporate groups where Willie would get overwhelmed with like these people that want to go in the mountains, and he would need help. And so I'd go up and help, and I'd take these packers, you know, these with my dad, we'd pack this group in, you know, 10 miles into the high country and to a alpine lake that's
Right.
pristine with trout and fishing and nobody else there. For like
Yeah.
a week, we'd stay there and we'd cook them food and, make sure all the animals were fine and fed and safe, because you'll shackle the horses in these meadows. It'll be like a box canyon where there's only one way in and one way out. And you'll shackle the horses at night so they can't go too far. And then and you'll put a bell on them so they ding 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 the bell and you can hear it
Right.
in the canyon. And then you'll like at 3 a.m, you'll go find them and you'll kind of bring them back into the canyon. They'll start to like work their way out of the canyon. And then without a horse, it's a long walk back.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
anyway, and then you'd cook for them and you'd guide them on the fishing, and like all that whole experience in the mountains was a big part of my life. And man, I miss the mountains for sure. Being in Austin, Texas now, like those mountains definitely call me, and
Yeah.
I have to go back every once in a while.
That's the classic John Muir quote, right? The mountains are
Yeah,
calling and I must go.
yeah.
Yeah, so fast forward to Tye, really quick, what was your personal best in college?
55. I jumped
55.
555. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then Jeremy yours was like 70 something.
I'm 1880.
Okay, got you.
Yeah.
So how do you guys, Jeremy, we'll start with you. How do you end up at Bell Athletics?
So I kind of talked about it a little bit ago with my sister, went to South Dakota the same time Derek Miles did. And so, and kind of once I fell back into pole vaulting, he was an easy contact. And, um, we'd talk, of course he was done with school, but just kind of starting off on his, professional career. And I remember, the first time that he went down, I think he met Earl and kind of the crew at the Drake relays, and he went down, and I just remember how excited he was about his trip down there, and he's like telling my sister, like, tell your brother he's got to go down there. And then like I ended up talking with him. He's like, dude, you got to go down, you got to go down. And so um in between my sophomore and junior year, I mean, I had the injury, but I was really kind of disappointed with kind of coming up as a runner up 2 years in a row. And I was like, that's not going to happen again. Like, it's not going to happen. And that's kind of the thing that pushed me over to the edge, that like, I'm going to go down there and get help. Like, I don't care if I'm running from a short run. Like I know I can jump higher. I'm going to
Right.
go and um, work with the guy that's going to get it out of me. And so I went down there and just loved it. Kind of the same deal. Just was energized. I was down there for a camp, probably kind of the middle of the summer. I had enough time, like about a month later, I went back for another one and called my college coach up, and I was like, hey, like, I think I can come down. I think they'd be okay if I would keep coming down here. Is that okay with you? And so he was like, yeah, like we had kind of minimal coaching and minimal resources, and they're like, we'll make it work. And so what I would tend to do is I had all my classes scheduled for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I would usually, like, the week after a test, like it seemed like they always fall in the same week, right? It's just kind of how
Right.
how things go. And so on that week after a test, I would skip Friday and skip Monday, and kind of the coach would let my professors know he's doing something with track, and go basically leave Wednesday after class, go down Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and drive back either Monday night or Tuesday.
You would drive
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
Pennsylvania?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like 15 or
Whoa.
16-hour drive. But it's expensive private school and Division III
Right.
budget. So you weren't paying for polls to go and fly in and stuff like that. So
Wow.
um so that's what I would do. I did that almost every month. For the next 2 years, for my junior and senior year, I'd go down for every 4 or 6 weeks.
So how does it work at Bell? Like, when I've never been down, I need to go down there sometime.
Mhm.
I you hear all different types of things. Like, you go down, you work with Earl, and then is there like a place for you to stay, or do you just like stay in a hotel, or like what do you do?
Yeah, it depends. So, we've those camps for a long time. And when I first went down there were like 40 kids in the camp. Yeah, it was like 40 people. And so I remember going out there. It's in the middle of the summer, middle of July. So it's like the overnight lows are like 95 degrees with
Ooh.
95% humidity, and like trying to find a spot. So there are some air conditioned. There's two like bunk rooms that they've been redone now. They're nicer now than what they were when I went, but like they're air conditioned. But I went in there for like a half hour the first day I was there, and just like felt like somebody cracked you in the face with a hot wet towel when you walked out. And I was like, it's just not worth it. And so I went and I'd sleep out on the floor on these little pads right in front of the huge fan. You've probably seen in some of the videos, like the big fans that we
Barn
have.
fan, big barn fan,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I was like right smack dab in front of that, on a, like, just trying to
That's
like acclimate to the heat and the humidity.
right.
Um, but that's kind of, I mean, that was how I first got there. Then as I kept going down, then I'd usually sleep down there in those bunk rooms. And for a little while, actually, Daniel Ryland lived in that apartment in the building. So after I'd been coming down for a little while, I'd stay up there in one of those rooms in an actual bed, and just kind of made it work. Like I got so much better. Even if, if I was struggling with something, it's like I could go down there and figure it out. And maybe I didn't jump higher while I was down there, but within the next couple of weeks, I knew I was going to jump higher. And it was, it was kind of crazy. It's like, but I didn't even have a cell phone for most of that time. So it's like, I just remember like singing at the top of my lungs to the radio for my own entertainment. And it's like there's a few areas where I knew, like, I can't wait till I get, like, going through Columbus. There was this awesome kind of rock station that I loved. Like, they'd play Corn and
Yeah.
uh Godsmack, and it's like, yes, like this station's awesome. Like I
Corn
couldn't
and
wait for like
Godsmack.
that, like
That's
that
hilarious.
2 hours of radio time. And then there was another one kind of in central Kentucky that was more of like alternative. And so it's like I kind of remember I did it so often. That's like, okay, like I've got this section of time where like I gotta let my voice rest, like let's get some water, like save it, kind of like you're doing yesterday, so I can really be on my game even though I'm by myself in my car and
That's so
just going
funny.
away. But it's like, yeah, I mean, you'd go down there. It was always worth the trip, and it's great to see. At that point, Ty, I think you were living there full time,
Mhm.
and or just about ready to take off. I think, I can't remember. I know you were there for a little bit, but seeing Jeff and Jill and Kelly, and there's always like just a recharge, and you knew you're going to get something good out of it and fix whatever you were struggling And, eventually, I mean, at that point, I was kind of set on going to medical school and had got everything. Like I took my MCATs, I'd done all that stuff to do it. And like I said before, like my junior year, just I got so much better. And kind of brought it up to Earl's like, hey, like, would it be okay, like, if I'd come down here after I graduate? And he goes, oh yes, like, thank goodness. Like, I didn't want to ask you because I didn't want to screw up the medical school thing, but I'm really happy you did. So yeah, like when you're done, come, like, keep coming
Wow.
down here like you're doing, and we'll have a place for you when you graduate. So
Wow, that's really crazy. Like that commitment to like drive that many times. That's really, really crazy. Good for you. And then Ty, so how did it work with your transition to Bell?
Yeah. So I didn't know Earl other than a few videos that I had watched, like growing up, like, the Boobka videos and the Earl Bell videos and stuff. So I
Yeah.
really didn't know much of, or anything that he had a training center in Arkansas. I didn't know where he lived. Really knew nothing about him. And I didn't know what I wanted to do after college. I had this girlfriend that broke my heart at the end of college, and I was kind of like, well, now what do I do? And so there was at nationals, there was this guy going around who said, hey, we're starting this club in Indiana called the Indiana Invaders. And it was mostly like a running club, but he's like, we're going to do some field events at IUPUI and stuff. And so after college, I had a motorcycle. That's all I had. And my roommate had a van. So he like threw my motorcycle in the van, or actually on a trailer behind the van. And I had just a couple bags of clothes. And I went down there, and I remember we pulled into the parking lot of this apartment where we were like, the invaders were like supposed to be, put up and all this stuff. And it was, the sun came up. We slept in the car, and the sun came up, and it was like full ghetto, like full on ghetto, cars on blocks, like all that stuff, right? And so like I check in, and I know nobody, and there's no place. Like I have like just under $300 to my name at that point. And so like I had no money to pay for anything. And I called the guy that's like heading this up, and I'm like, man, is there anybody that I could stay with for the next few nights until I find a job? And he's like, oh yeah, I'll hook you up with this guy, Phil McMullen. And so Phil is like still one of my best friends today. Like one of my best buds. And he's like, yeah, sure. He has a fiance, and they're in an apartment, and they're like, yeah, sleep on our floor. So like I have my camping gear, and that's all I need. Right. So I'm on a thermarest and a sleeping bag, and that's how I was introduced to Indianapolis, and I started training there, but all I had was 5 full run poles that Minnesota gave me at the end. So I had no short run poles, and they didn't have anything, zero pole vault stuff. And so I started training with Phil he's a decathlete, kicking my butt, and like we're doing repeat 400s and stuff. Like, yeah, like completely not pole vault related, but I didn't know. So
Right.
anyway, we're training together, and I'm getting really fit, but I'm not pole vaulting. And every time I try to pole vault, I land on the runway because I don't have any poles. I mean, I have 5 big poles. That's it. And
Right.
so then like I started expressing my frustration to our leader, and he's like, man, there's this girl as part of our club named Shannon Gallagher, and she went down to this place called Bell Athletics in Arkansas. And I'm like, okay, you can, and you didn't have internet, right? So like I didn't have a phone with internet, so you couldn't look that up. So
Right.
like I'm just like, okay, well, and so I talked to Shannon on the phone, and Shanona is like, hey, I'll talk to Earl. Why don't you come down? And so I did. So like I rode my motorcycle down there, and the first experience was amazing. Like I was really fit, and I had no clue about pole vault. And like we started at 2 steps, and I'm like, what in the world? Like I'm not full running. Like what's going on? And like I made this super quick progression, and I was like PRing the first day I was there. And Earl was
Wow.
amazing, and like the facility, and like it felt like home to me. Out in a bean field in the middle of nowhere is where I grew up and what I was comfortable with. Like it just felt like home. And like redneck engineering was, predominantly employed as the main method of doing everything, right? And I fit right into that. And I was like, building stuff for him and welding things together and building platforms. And he had these hurdles, which I don't know if he still does, but made out of PVC. And Earl is freaking genius. That guy can make stuff from nothing and make it look and work really well. He is incredibly industrious and resourceful. And so like I just kind of fit right into that mold. And I came down, and then I went back and I struggled up there for another month or two or whatever it was. And I came back to Bell Athletics. And after the second trip, Earl's like, "What are you doing? Like, just move down here."
Right.
I'm like, okay, cool. So I went back to Indy, which was like a 9-hour drive. And I didn't have a car. So I went to an auction and bought like a 1960 something Volkswagen bus that wouldn't go out of third gear. When I bought it, I realized, whoa, this thing has a really bad exhaust leak and it won't even shift out of third gear. It doesn't have reverse, clutch is going out. So like I get it home that night, and the next day, like I baling wire the shifter link back together, and I can go through the gears now. Clutch is still going out. I put my motorcycle inside the bus. I take out the middle seat. I leave the middle seat on the sidewalk at the ghetto hotel, ghetto apartment complex. And I put my motorcycle in there and I throw my clothes in and I start going toward Arkansas. The clutch goes out in the first mile. And so so I drove from Indy to Jonesboro without a clutch. And every gas station I'd have to find a gas station on the side of the road that was kind of downhill or at least flat. And I would coast in, I'd turn it off, and I just shifter into neutral, and I'd coast it in, I'd fill it up with gas, and then I'd put it in first gear. And in a VW bus, the gearing is low enough that the starter will actually start it in first gear. So like, you turn the key and it's like, vroom, 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 and it takes off, and you can start it in gear. So I did, and you can't do that anymore because you got all these buttons and technology and stuff. But back then, you could do it, and so I would.
So cool.
And then I made it to Jonesboro, and I remember I get there, and like the next morning I get there late, whatever, and I sleep on the pit. And the next morning I remember Earl wakes up and he gets his cup of coffee and he comes out. He has his office downstairs, and I go outside. I'm like getting my motorcycle out because that's my mode of transportation. And he's "Hey, Tito," he didn't call me Tito then yet, but he's like, "Hey, Tye, like that's a nice motorcycle." And I'm like, "Thanks, I'm really proud of it." Like in 1974 CB 504, and he looked at it and he's like looking at it, and I'm thinking like he's admiring this motorcycle, and he's like, "Hey, if that doesn't get sold in like the first week, it'll end up in that ditch over there." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So no motorcycle. I thought he was joking, and he's like, "No, I'm serious." And I'm like, "Okay."
He made you sell it?
Oh yeah, like immediately.
Oh
so
my gosh.
Yeah, so I sold that, and then we had the Volkswagen. We had the van, and I got it running better and better. I'd slowly work on it, and then I remember one day we had this thing. Chad Harding was in the office. He was working in the office for Earl, and we had this bungee, a couple of the bungees that we used, for pole vault bungees, and we made this huge slingshot, and we were shooting potatoes into the rice field across the street there in front of the house. And then I'm like, "Okay, let's take this to the next level." So I get my bus and I rip up and down the road, and they're trying to hit me as I drive by, going as fast as that bus would go. And so they did. Chad nailed it right on the side, and it put a huge dent in the side of this old bus, and it made a loud noise. And
is hilarious.
Antics. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, Earl Bell is still like, man, he's like a dad, right? Like he really is like a second dad to me. And he is the most amazing, intuitive, intelligent person and coach he's just unbelievable. He's really magic. And, the guys that would come to Arkansas to find that magic and would leave quickly because of Jonesboro would weed themselves out. And what you were left with was a group of people who had the self-motivation and drive to make it work in a place that they thought was like Jonesboro, Arkansas, not the greatest place to live. But I thought it was. I thought it was a great place to live. And those people were so dedicated and devoted to what they did that magic happened. I mean,
So you're
magic.
saying that like
Really good.
Jonesboro almost like itself was like a filter, like it
I
kind of
think it
Absolutely.
just
was. Yeah,
filtered everybody through it and is like,
it really
okay,
was.
you're coming down here to get better at the pole vault. You're chasing after this dream, and you've heard rumors that Earl's the guy who's going to get you there. But then you go through this filter of Jonesboro, Arkansas, and then whoever comes out on the other side of that actually really wants to do it and take it to the next level. Why
Yeah.
was Jonesboro? I've never been there. Like I said, I have to go, but why was Jonesboro, like, why were people turned off by it?
Man,
I think there's a
Grande.
couple of layers to that, right, Ty? I mean, so it's grown a lot since I moved there. But you've got, I mean, first of all, it's a small town. I mean, I think when I first started going there, it was like 50,000 people, which didn't seem that small, but I feel like everybody that lives there for the most part is from there. So it's like kind of hard to crack into different friend circles outside of pole vault. Luckily, we
Yeah.
had such good people there that it wasn't a necessity. But then you also have like we were all single at that point, and it's a dry county, so there's no bars, there's no
Oh.
chain restaurants. So it's like, what are you going to go do? There's not tons of stuff to go do
So
if
the
you
party
can't
animals, like it
entertain
wasn't a
yourself.
very good spot for the party animals to go.
I mean,
Correct.
no, it wasn't, but like I think even if you weren't like a full party animal, like even to go get a good steak, like there was one place you could go,
Right.
Yeah.
501 Club. So I mean, yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely obstacles, but like to Ty's point, I mean, you had guys that and magic, like it was a palpable electricity that you could feel walking through the door. And I think
Really.
that's part of why it wasn't really a thing. It wasn't that big of a hindrance to drive those 15, 16 hours because like you just felt it walking through the door. I'm kind of getting goosebumps thinking about it now. Just that impression, you just felt it walking through the door, and you'd see Jeff Hartwig doing his workout first thing in the morning, and Kelly was around, and then Ty. I remember one of the first weekends I was there watching um watching Jeff jump, and he jumped like 19-1 or 2, and then Ty jumped like 19 feet in practice, and Derek came in and jumped 19 feet in practice, and um, it's like later in the day, Chad jumped 18.8, and you're like, what? What's this guy doing? How did he make the Olympic team?
Right.
Like, and
Right.
it's
I
just like that's what you and Kelly would jump 15 feet, and Jill Schwartz moved there about the same time I did, and like it just was unbelievable, and like how we all got along and we were all very different people, but complementary to each other.
right.
And it's like and Ty talked about like we just made things work. Our company motto when I was kind of the guy in the office was the leaders in low tech. It's like we just made stuff work.
Right. Right. The thing that I found fascinating about Bell was like you guys didn't go in there 580 guys. Like you guys, and that's the thing is that sometimes what you find nowadays, and I'm not saying this is always true, but it's like, okay, somebody jumped, you know, 580 in college and then they, go and then they, continue to jump 580 somewhere else. You know, there was a development that happened at Bell, which was so cool. And it was like almost like if you heard of somebody going there, like, hey, so and so moved down there. It's like, oh man, well, that's the next person. Like it's like because there was you went there as a good collegiate pole vaulter, but you left there, being a great post collegiate pole vaulter, 580s, 590s. So that's what I found very fascinating about it. Cause like Jeff was like, what was he like a 35 guy in college?
Oh, he was like,
Like Ty, you said you're a 55 guy.
Mhm.
Derek, what did Derek, he said it on the
he
podcast.
was 17.4 or 6 in college, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, like a
30,
30,
35.
35 guy. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's just, I don't know. I just found that very fascinating that there was development that happened. It's easy to just keep a person healthy and just have them do the same thing they've always done, and just jump the same heights. But it's really hard to develop somebody, especially if they've jumped over 550. Like developing people over like that have crossed that threshold, it's a different type of thing. So
Mm.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, I mean, Ty, you can jump in too, but you think it just, it really speaks to Earl as far as, he was always, you emphasize your strengths and you kind of chip away at your weaknesses. And so you, and he kind of the opposite, he can turn kind of nothing into something nice, but he always simplified things to the point where it just, he could explain it in a way that you had to work on one thing that would just have such a big domino effect. And then you put that with people like Ty said, that just were willing to go through anything to achieve their dreams. And it just was kind of just an unbelievable atmosphere and an unbelievable training group to where people could achieve those things.
it's kind of like
But
a
I think
perfect
I mean,
storm though,
yeah,
like
I mean,
It,
but
it
I
was,
think
yeah.
none of that would happen without Earl. I mean, I think Ty would agree that he
right. Right.
just so good at getting you to focus on the thing that mattered most to you as a jumper.
Yeah. Yeah,
Huh.
that's well said, Grande. Like Earl has a few high level key philosophical components of his coaching that are always there, right? Like the right pull, the right grip, the right run. Like that's the fundamental, right? Like you have those are the first things you have to do. And if you do that, then like the rest is kind of butter. But he would have tests like, okay, if you think about what the kind of the most important component of pole vaulting is, it's speed. That's it. Like whoever runs the fastest usually wins the meet, right?
Yeah.
And so Earl had a test for that, which was the 15-meter fly. And we would, and that's like he always wanted us to know how fast we are at a certain given moment in our training, progressions. And pretty much like you knew how high you were going to be able to jump based on how fast you could run. And once
That's
you
without a pole.
dial,
Without a
yeah,
pole.
that's
Okay.
without a pole. Yeah. Because the conversion, right? Like, and Earl is always about the weakest link. Like Grande said, all you do is you find the weak link and you strengthen it. So like when coaches ask me like, hey, what are the number one or two things you work on with every pole vaulter? I'm like, well, I have to respond to that with another question. Like, what's their weak link? I can't tell you what to work on without knowing where your weak link is, right? And I even explained to the kids that I'm working with now, like I really want you to understand I want you to think about what weak link in a chain means. Like, because you can say the word weak link and never, just kind of glance over it. But really, truly, if you have a big chain and you hook it to a tractor and another tree or something, and you pull that chain, only one of the links will break first, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And so that link has to be strengthened. But what happens when you put that link back together and weld it stronger than it was originally? What happens when you pull on the chain again?
It's gonna be another one that breaks.
A different link breaks.
Yeah.
A different link breaks. And so on and so forth. Like throughout your
Huh.
entire career, it's always the weak link. And Earl was so good at like picking out that weak link. Like, and you sometimes they're elusive. These links are elusive, right? Especially at the higher end where you're just nitpicking. And he would figure that out, usually without telling us. He figured it out, and then he just like introduced these things, and it would be like magic. And all of a sudden, you're like on to the next thing, and you jump a PR like a 1 inch. And that's the other thing, like you don't move the bar up at 6 inches at a time. You don't move it up a foot at a time. You get a 1 inch PR, and you do that 10 times in a row or 12 times in a row, and you're a foot higher in the air.
Right.
Never did he move the bar up more than an inch. I mean, that, no matter what.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
awesome. So what is it like about what do you think do you think that Earl was, when it's all said and done, he is the reason for all of that. Because some people will say, well, it was just like there was a lot of good athletes there, and things like that. I do think it was a perfect storm of like a really good coach that was kind of groundbreaking in having their own facility. Like you could definitely say that he's like the godfather of all of these things that are popping up around the country right now.
Yeah.
Because he was doing he did that before, anybody that I knew of did it. But this kind of perfect storm of like, oh my gosh, there's like a pole vault training facility. That's crazy. Oh my gosh, there's a coach there that knows how to coach. Whoa, that's crazy. Holy cow, the best pole vaulters in the country are training there. Whoa, that's wild. And then it just started circling, and then just all of a sudden it turned into what it turned into. What do you think somebody is going to have to do nowadays to recreate that?
Man,
I know that's a hard one.
It's a really tough question.
I mean, like you said, right? You have to be at the right place at the right time. So, like in Earl's age and his progression as a coach and his progression as a former athlete, like that timing had to be what it was. And then you just had a bunch of. I mean, I think there's still people out there like us, Grande, and the group that we were with, like Daniel and you, Kim, and Lon Badeau and Grande and Will Jones and Kim Becker and and Kelly Suttle, Jeff Hartwig, like all these people that are in my memory, who were magic and did amazing things. Derek Miles, I mean, all these people, right? You had to have those people, but I think those people probably still exist. But the magnetic force and pull that happened to get us all in that one place in that magic time, I think is hard to recreate. I think the universe has to create
It'll
that
never
sort of.
be the same. And I will never ever be able to, nothing will ever be the same as Bell Athletics. Like that was so special. Like that was just such a special time. And I don't know if you guys realized it, like while it was happening, like how special it is. But I mean, looking back on it now is like does that ever happen again? Like who knows? Like you just don't know like if something like that would happen again. The things that are fascinating to me, to be honest with you, is we ask these questions, my brother and I kind of ask ourselves these questions like, okay, what would we do if we allowed other elite vaulters to train at our facility? Like what would we do? It's like, well, it's in Chicago, like nobody wants to like live in the cold and like this and that, and you know, but I like that idea of how it was in Jonesboro, because I had never thought about that. Like it takes people that really want to be good. And if you like have to have palm trees in order at your facility, you don't really want to be good. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so the location kind of, that kind of takes it out of it, because Jonesboro was not in a prime location,
No. The time that I was there, even before I got there, when I was coming down as a collegiate athlete, there were a lot of athletes that were a lot better than me, that had already jumped a lot higher than me, that didn't want it.
Yeah.
It just didn't. They did not. Not that they didn't want to be good. They just didn't want Jonesboro. They didn't want to deal with not air conditioning and having to help chop wood and bring in firewood and help with building those hurdles. And I think what that did is it kind of cut down on. I mean, I don't think we had somebody that had a sense of entitlement in the group, and I think that kind of contributed to the overall atmosphere and kind of the encouragement everybody gave to each other. And I mean, you could sit down and talk with guys that, I mean, you're really competing against each other. There were enough guys there. There's only 3 spots on every team, but it's like Tye wasn't kicking my mark out of the way to gain the edge. Like we were watching each other's
Right.
mid marks and
filming
helping
for
each other and filming each other, coaching each other. Hey, can you come pick me up at the airport? And that type of stuff, because that wasn't an easy thing either. It was an hour drive to Memphis, and so I don't know. I think a lot of the difficulties or the lack of glamour kind of weeded out, like you'd said, is kind of its own built-in place filter, and the people that were maybe the entitlement, I guess, kind of got filtered out. And I don't know how you
Right.
duplicate that. I mean, it was always, I mean, we had people that wanted to come down there that just didn't necessarily fit, and Earl would pull the plug. Like, no, it's gonna
Really? Yeah, that was my
mess up what we
question.
got.
That was my
Yeah.
question is, were there times that you guys had to just be like, kind of like, hey, this person's you gotta go.
Yeah. I'm not gonna say names, but I remember at least 2 or 3 times.
Really?
Yeah. So yeah, Earl early on, like Earl would consult with Jeff when Jeff was like the main guy there and there wasn't a huge group. Really, he and Jeff would kind of sit down and talk about potential candidates, right? Coming in. Like he'd invite people in to come jump all the time, and pretty much anybody could come jump, right? And he'd
Right.
help. But there was a level of, okay, does this person fit our community? Because really it was more about the person. Okay, so I'm going to step back one of the things I think was really special about Bell Athletics during that era was that there was like Earl. It was like I've never been a part of a commune or anything like a kibbutz or something, but Earl had created this environment where there was no selfishness or very
Yeah.
little selfishness, and it was all about sharing and giving and community effort, and like everybody pitched in and did stuff, like whatever they could offer they did, and it was such a like communal effort, whether and that extended, beyond the pole vault pit, right? We all helped each other get better. We would catch steps for each other every run down the runway. We would alternate and catch steps and take off steps and film. Like we had our stations and we would just alternate through that because we wanted to contribute and get better and learn and be a part of this thing. And that extended into the work life. Like, here's how weird this was. Now looking back, I'm like, God, I can't believe that Earl did this. But so like he had his business. He was selling pits and poles, and he'd have these camps, and we'd help him with the camps, right? And he'd make money. And like I lived in the building for a long time and I didn't have a job and I wouldn't make money. So I'd go do stuff as much as I could for him during the day. And I'd go paraglide with you, Kim, in my car, like towing me down the road. And we did these things for Earl, but really he didn't ask anything of us. And then I'd be like, shoot, like I gotta buy some groceries. And I'd go to Earl and I'd be like, hey, I'm out of money. And he'd be like, here's $300. Go get yourself some food and whatever. Like the money and job and like we didn't keep track of that stuff, right?
Right.
Everybody just contributed and was a part of, our community, our little group. And I think that was one of the really special things is that he was so selfless, anti-selfish, whatever the word is,
Selfless. Yeah.
selfless.
Yeah.
I mean, he just gave and gave his energy being a big part of that. And you only have so much of that, right? And it was like magic era because he was at the age and the time in his life and the people that were there, everything just lined up to create this amazing community. And he gave all of his yin and yang. I mean, like he spent his whole life force energy on our group. And as it tailed off and that community sort of started dissipating, I had met Amy Acuff and my wife, and I had moved to Austin, and everybody started like kind of migrating away a little bit, and it just started to slow down. And then Sammy took on Sam and Henry. I mean, and Drew was the oldest at that point, but like Sam and Henry were ankle biters. These kids, they were like little kids, and now they're like full blown adults and doing great things, and have like stepped into that role and kind of kept it going, and it's great. But it'll never be the same because Earl is who he is, and like you can't recreate that. But if I had one bit of advice, for anybody trying to recreate that, I would say that the community and the giving, the amount of energy and like thought that Earl put into it was second to none. And without that, none of it would have existed. No question.
Yeah. I think it's that, and I think that it has to be the right place where it properly weeds out the bad people on its own. You know,
Mhm.
the people and the place just kind of like, if you're a bad apple, you just will not want to be there, you know, and that's what's so cool. And if you get those, you know, the right people together, you don't really have to worry about bad people coming in, because they come in and then they feel like, oh well, I just don't fit in here, these are a bunch of really good people. So like,
Yeah.
and then they just get out, you know. And
Yep.
that was important, and I think that was a huge thing, is you know, making sure you have the right people. So that naturally lends itself to you guys helping me get Earl on the podcast. I've tried, and, and it is it's not easy. So any tips on getting
You may
Earl on
have
the
to do
podcast?
a tandem deal with him and Sam and Henry, or
Yeah.
maybe Jeff or something
Yeah.
like that.
Well, I was
Get some
thinking
other outside pressure on him.
yeah, right. I've talked with Sam a little bit, and he was like, I'll pitch it to him. And he pitched it to him, and it didn't work. It did
Yeah.
You
not
may have to
work.
drive down there.
Yeah, I
Drive
was gonna
down there and do
say.
it live.
I think
Yep.
that is to be honest with you, I think, you know, I would really like, my brother Luke has been down there a couple of times and vaulted really well down there, and enjoyed his time. And Sam's the only one who I've ever talked with, but he's always been so incredibly kind to me and my family. You know, and I think maybe I go down there, and if it happens, it happens, and if not, I still get to make my pilgrimage to Bell Athletics at worst case scenario, you know. So I don't know. I think that that's probably the proper way to do it too, just to you know, for who he is, you know, do you see Earl on a Zoom call? You know, like,
Probably not. Yeah.
you know.
Not very long.
Yeah. No.
You do it
No.
while he's out hitting golf balls on the side. It'd probably be the
Yeah.
best way to do it.
Right.
A case of Coors Light and a nice long
Bush
evening
light now. It's
upstairs.
bush light now.
Bushy's because it's cheaper.
But he said he did a double blind taste test and liked bush light better.
Well,
Man,
I
that's hard
heard
to
that they're
imagine.
like the same. Oh
It
no,
is,
that's
yeah.
no,
Yeah.
it's Keystone and Coors.
Right.
Oh, maybe it's
Keystone.
Keystone
Keystone
and
Light.
Coors are
Yeah,
like the
sorry.
same. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I think that would probably be, you know, something that I need to try to figure out how to do there. I mean, there's like 1.5 million things that I've wanted to talk to you guys about. So
Let's go.
I have to like, you know, taper it down to, you know, something that is you know, more manageable. But before we kind of get off of your vaulting careers, um what poles and grips were you guys on? Just because there's a lot of like crazy like people that love those metrics.
Yeah.
Die.
So Grande, you start first because it's
Oh,
most
okay.
impressive.
Yeah, yours is
So
gonna be crazy.
not really, because you're like, how did you only jump so high? The biggest pole I ever used was like a 10.6.
Cool.
It was a 530 that Guild made for me, and I ended up gripping 17.3. It was in a beach. It was in a beach vault, and like it was my biggest pole in the bag, and like the box just kept sinking, and I still ended up. I think I only jumped like 18.6 or 7 that day, because it's like I kept blowing through. I didn't have any more poles. But it
Oh
was
my
like, that's like, you
gosh.
could see like, holy cow, like I guess a deep box does make a way big
Yeah,
difference. So
for sure. For
um
sure. So what
so
was
that
like
was
your
the
regular, money pole?
yeah, so kind of when I um got going, kind of the peak of my professional career, I would pretty routinely use um like 11.2 or 11.4 520. And that's, we had a little different pole set up, so it's like I didn't need the extra long
Right.
stuff. I'd still grip right there at 16, 11, 17 feet.
Gotcha. Gotcha. All right, Tye, what about you?
I mean, so at the like peak of my career, I was jumping on 510s, um, mostly gripping just a little over 5 meters or right at 5 meters. And the factory flex probably would have been somewhere around like 12, like mid 12s, something like that.
Okay. Okay. Got you. Okay. And then that brings me to Essex. Because Tye, Jeremy, I don't know, like with you, were you mainly like pacer?
So yeah, I jumped on kind of the two big ones. So in college, just because of where we were, Spirit was what we had. And then when I jumped 18 feet, then all of a sudden we had the opportunities to switch. So from my junior year all the way up until the last year of college, or last year of my professional career, I was on pacer.
Okay. Okay. Got you. And then Tye, for some reason, I feel like you had like different poles in your hands, like at all the time. Is that true?
Yeah, I did. I mean, so I wasn't fortunate enough throughout most of my career to have any sort of pole sponsor. So Earl had a bunch of old poles in the building that I would weed through. Jeff Hartwig had like a whole bunch of old. I mean, everybody that is there like had scrap poles, and I kind of put together a series of mismatched poles for my first set, and including some old Spirit poles that Steve had built for Earl way back when. And man, I just had huge variety of poles. And then Gil started building poles for me specifically on requested by Earl, and that was Earl's fastback design. And they were really good poles, but they were heavy to carry because a lot of fiberglass at the bottom of the pole. But those were really, really good poles. And then they made a decision that they were gonna build the FX. And I jumped on the first series of those FX poles, and I just couldn't make them work. I really struggled. And I mean, they had all kinds of technology and science behind it, but I just couldn't make it work. And I tried for a while, but ultimately, when we had asked them to continue to build the fastback, they couldn't. They didn't want to any
Right.
longer, and it was really hard. Like, it's all custom stuff, and it's just so time consuming for what? For like, and they're giving the poles away to guys like me. Like,
Right.
it didn't make any sense for them, and I understand that business decision, but I was like so dialed into that design that I really couldn't give it up. It was, and so that's when Earl and Bruce got together and started talking about
For
this
those of you,
pole.
for those who don't know, Bruce who?
Bruce Caldwell.
Okay.
He was the founder of Essex, and before that, he had Fibersport. And I mean, Bruce has been in the game forever. He was a pole vaulter, and he built poles for Earl and all the guys back then. Like, he's been everywhere and done everything. The guy, he'd be an interesting guy to have on the podcast. But so Bruce was really kind and gracious enough to be like, "Hey, I've just started this company. Let's get these guys the poles they need." And I went up to Dallas where he had the factory, and I built my first set of poles with Beto,
This
and
is
it was
the
awesome.
Essex. This is like the
Yeah,
origin story of Essex then?
it is. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. And that's where it all started with Bruce, and then Earl would help design those poles, and then Bruce would build them with Beto, and then we'd end up with a good series of poles. And I was the first 19 footer to jump on Essex pole. I jumped 19 feet, a little more than 19 feet on Essex poles, and that held up until Sam Kendricks went ahead and just amazed the world with his abilities, which was interesting because those poles. That was when UST got in the mix and started helping Bruce, and that was like the transitional period. And then from there, UST has just, with their resources, their engineering, and their material science, like, man, it's at a whole nother level.
Yeah, so that's the thing that I'm curious about because my dad has ran camps at North Central College for like the last 30 years, and we had helped him coach those, every summer. And there was two Essex that we had. This was back in like, I don't know, like 2009, 2010 ish, maybe.
Yeah.
And kids would be like, "Hey, I got this one," and I'd be like, just put that one back. You don't want you don't want to jump on that one, and it wasn't, I knew Earl had some influence on it, so it wasn't like I was like, they couldn't be good or whatever, but I just like, to me, whenever a kid jumped on it, I was like, that's not what I'm looking for right now. Fast forward to, right now, I'm about to call up Essex after this call and give him my credit card for another huge Essex order. So like,
Excellent.
what changed? Where did it go from like the pole that I don't want any of my kids to jump on, I just probably just give it away, to like having it where I'm funneling a good amount of money into these things now?
Grande, you want to start?
Yeah. So, I guess in 2015, Bruce had sold a company to, I don't know when he sold it. Was it 14 or 15? Probably 14.
Somewhere right around there.
Sold a company to UST, and they were kind of going off the way that they had been doing things with Bruce, and um, kind of put in their own inputs. And I very distinctly remember the phone call, because this was, I was kind of trying to ramp up for another Olympic team in 2015 and 2016. And Don Rare called, and actually I think maybe you called me first and said to be aware that they may be calling. And I was like, I don't really, I don't want to change anything. I feel like everything's going good. I had my set of fastback poles, and was confident. I'd been jumping well and had been coming back. I had a knee injury that I felt like I was coming back from, and I just didn't want to mess anything up. And so I kind of was real short on the phone. And thankfully, Don called me back again, I don't know, less than a week later, and said, "Hey, this is, sorry to bug you again. Let me tell you kind of what we're looking for." And we'll start off with what happened with golf. And he had said that they had developed with their golf shafts kind of the theoretical best possible golf shaft you could. Like, the math couldn't get better, the materials couldn't get better. Um, it was as good as it could be in the simulator and mathematically, but they'd put it in the players' hands and they hated it. And
Hold
they're
on
like, well, okay, like,
one second, Jeremy. So people are probably confused that don't know what
or
UST
yeah,
is. What
UST
US?
Mamiya is the golf shaft company, and they ended up buying the pole company, kind of based on, Bruce saw that they had stuff that normal pole companies can't buy as far as materials and resources.
Gotcha.
So Don is the special projects manager, very, very smart engineer. And anyway, so he was talking about the golf clubs, and they ended up saying, okay, like, what can we do? And all the players would talk about was feel. I want it to feel like this here. I want it to feel it release here. A bunch of golf terms that I don't know, but
Right.
kind of like some of the stuff that, like, when we're talking about pole vault poles, like, I want it to, feel soft, like bend early, bend easy. Then I
Right.
want to feel that scoop, and kind of get, like, a lot of it was like, huh, yeah, that kind of, I use some of those same words too, talking about pole vault
Yeah.
poles.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he said, he's like, we were like, okay, we're willing to design something off of feel, kind of in the back of our mind, saying, you know what, we'll do it just to kind of appease them, but we know that we've got the best thing you can do, like with formulas and mathematics, and kind of some of the same stuff that I remember hearing from other poll companies. Like, nope, this is as good as it gets. This is what our testing says. This is it.
Right.
And anyway, so he put those shafts in the players' hands, and sure enough, like, the ball's going further. They love it. It's going straighter. Like, and you start getting players to switch over to the shafts. And he goes, hey, I think we're going down the same road with our pole vault poles. It's like, we know what we want them to be, but what do we need to do for feel? Like, what do jumpers want to feel? How do they want things to go? And so it's like when he said that, or when he asked me that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what we've been wanting companies
Right.
to ask us as athletes. Like, what do
Wow.
we want to have in our pole vault poles? And then you kind of get a little more in depth, like, we've got this many engineers on staff, we've got structural engineers, we've got material engineers, we've got all of this material. They've already discovered that not all carbon's good for pole vault poles, not all fiberglass is good for pole vault poles, and you got to make things match. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like music to my ears.
That's
Like,
so
this is
cool.
what we've been wanting people to ask us and put into pole vault poles. And so, like, when we had that conversation, I was like, absolutely, like, this is something that I can get behind and I want to be a part of. And I think, everything I know about pole vault poles is from Earl. And it's like, this is something that we can kind of improve on this fastback design, take the same principles, but improve it with materials. And Ty had already mentioned that they're so heavy. We can cut down carry weight, we can make them stronger, we can reinforce things, we can make them more consistent because of the manufacturing. We also make arrow shafts for Easton, the carbon fiber arrow shafts, and like those things, the tolerances go out to like 8 decimal points as far as like how precise they have to be. So if you can do
Yeah.
that with arrow shafts, like pole vault pole should be easy.
Right.
And so, like, you get all of these things that they're good at, and they're actually starting to ask athletes, like, what do you want in a pole vault pole? Like, holy cow, this could be something special. And I went with them for a couple of years, and then we finally convinced Ty to jump in. And so then when we got together, it's like, it just seemed like things really, especially now in the last couple of years, you kind of see the fruits of our labor from those first few years.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so why did they choose Ty? I'll ask you, why did they choose you two? Like it was just because you had already done that fastback uh poll, or you were involved with that?
So the guy really at the core of the success of Essex is Don. I mean, I don't think he gets enough. He's a really intelligent engineer, as Grande said, but he's listened. I think he's listened to every single one of your podcasts like 4 times.
He called me the other day, and I was like, I've never met him before, and we were on the phone for an hour and a half. I was in the
Yeah.
Walmart parking lot waiting to go into Walmart.
Yeah, yeah.
We talked for an hour and a half. He was such a cool guy, and just you could tell that he was very just intrigued with it all.
Yeah.
He has
Mhm.
no pole vaulting experience, no pole vaulting background, but just very intrigued and just fascinated and curious about it. And yeah. So anyway, keep going.
So I was at the time when I met Don. So I had jumped 19 feet plus on the Essex poles, and Bruce would tell Don about who to talk to, and like what's up with Essex. And I remember I got a phone. So I was a paramedic in the city of Austin for a while, and then I had just left my paramedic job, and I was a sales guy for paramedic software, like what they call EHR, electronic health records. Grande knows all about those and probably hates them. And so I was selling software now at that moment, and I was up in Dallas making visits to fire departments, and I get this call from Don Merrigan. He's like, "Hey, I'm Don, and I want to meet you and talk a little bit about pole vault poles. I work at Essex and whatnot." So I remember I sat down at lunch with him and had a beer, and we started talking about. And he's like, "What's the most important things?" And all he wanted to know was like how he could do better at manufacturing, and what were important things. And I said, well, first of all, you got to turn a pole around in like 2 days. You got to get poles out the door in like two
Right.
days. And
Right.
he like laughed. He's like, oh my God, you're not serious. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. Like, you have to do that. And so like that has been the goal. We're still not there, but we're really getting close. Lee
Yeah.
Inero has done an amazing job at like refining production and really taking ownership and making it work. And each year we get better and better. And even with the amount of growth that Essex has seen over the last like 5 years or 4 years is, I don't know how you could expect to keep up with that, like year over year kind of growth.
Yeah, you
And
guys are putting a lot. I mean, I talk with Brian Monshine a lot, and it's really cool to watch the growth and to hear about it. But I mean, you get more and more clubs and more people involved with it. That means more and more orders, and that means more and more, issues trying to get them out and things like that. It's gonna be hard,
yeah, yeah,
but it is what it is. And yeah,
yeah.
it's cool to watch.
The team is up for the task. I mean, like I said, Lee has, really established himself as like a leader and a person who wants to make it all happen. And he bends over backwards all the time. Everybody in the back, and Don is constantly involved at the high level. And when we need him in the minutia, he's there. And it's really a fun team, like another kind of magic moment in time, I think. And so that day that I met Don, he's like, "Hey, we're looking for a sales guy to help sell these Essex poles. Would you be interested?" I'm like, "I can't, but I know this guy. His name is Grande, Jeremy Scott. You should give him a call." And that's when that happened. And it was just perfect timing. Like Grande, again, he couldn't do it right away, but eventually he found himself there. And then with his knowledge and abilities, like then you saw this like great momentous push. And that's really when the magic started to happen, was when Grande showed up.
So who sold Kendricks the first Essex?
I think
Bruce
that was actually
and
Bruce.
Beto.
Bruce.
Beto
Yeah.
and Bruce went to his house, and at the time he was having trouble with poles breaking,
Yeah.
not Essex poles, and so they went, and Marnie, his mom, said, "The most important thing for me is that my son doesn't get hurt. Can you build a pole that won't break?" That's how the story goes. And yeah, from
Right.
there, yeah, that's
Well, I
right.
think that's like the big thing is that I talked with Don about it, is like, the ability to be able to gain the trust in carbon fiber, like of the public and stuff like that. And so like that's been something that if you pick up an Essex pole, it it feels very like robust. Like it feels hardy. Like it's not heavy, obviously, and the diameter is really small, which are two good things, but it doesn't feel brittle or frail. Like, do you guys have any idea like how they're trying to get rid of the stigma of carbon?
Yeah,
I mean, I think,
Grande.
yeah, so I'll start. Ty'll speak more to it. He's got more of the engineering brain, I think. But I mean, one of the things that I learned early on, I'd mentioned it a little bit, like not all carbon's good for pole vault. Like the materials have different stiffness and stretch properties and deformation properties, and then on top of that, they've all got different resins impregnated in. So like you have to
Right.
have the right fibers with the right resins, and then you never use just all fiberglass. You never use all carbon. You got to add in fiberglass, and just because you're adding fiberglass, that doesn't mean that's going to work. You've got to have the right type of fiberglass with the type, similar
Wow.
bending properties, so you don't get delamination and shearing, and it's got to have the right type of resin. And so all of that stuff is so far, beyond. And that's why I'm so happy we have the engineering team and the materials team that we do, because it's of the how many materials do we have? 85, 95 different types of materials that we use in all of our different businesses.
Wow.
Not all of them are good for pole vault poles. Not all of them are good for golf shafts. Not all are good for. You got to take the specific material properties, the resin properties, the stretch, the deformation characteristics, all these things that are so far beyond what you would normally think about. Like, okay, it's a pole vault pole, but you got to
Right.
make them all work together. And then I know that we do studies on our poles to make sure that, our layers are laminating. We're not getting porosity. We're making sure that the resins are bonding together to make it really one solid layer. So I think it's, the research and development. it's 100% having the right team. We keep coming back to this. It's always about the right people, right? You got to have the
Right.
right team with the right specialties, and you got to all work together.
Right.
And so I think that's what we've been able to do. This is what we want to feel in our pole vault poles. Okay, let's take it to the materials guys. We've got, okay, we can handle this. This is the material that needs to be in this part of the pole. And you put that to the structural engineers and they make it all happen.
So during the development of these poles, who were you guys testing these, or like
I was the test pilot for a lot of it, at least in the
really?
bigger poles. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which
And
was
I
fun.
was,
I've got a set of poles that's pretty freaking cool with the different things that go on inside of them, but we settled
Grande
on the
was,
best design.
yeah, Grande was the next level tester. I was the original tester. And
Oh,
that was like when Bruce was building poles with Beto and, doing their absolute best with really, really limited resources. And so
Right.
I had jumped on those, and, they were pretty good poles. Consistency was an issue. Like, I'd have one or two really good poles that I loved, and then kind of like the consistency. So that was a big thing, was consistency. And that comes down to having resources to buy a whole bunch of mandrels, for example, and material. So you have consistency among, your suppliers and all that. And then the engineering, and like then that whole next level Grande got to test, and it was pretty fun. I think that progression.
mhm.
So
Yeah, it
Ty,
was.
you were a big part of like kind of the Bruce Caldwell, and I'm sorry, who was the other person?
Beto, the engineer at the
Beto.
time, was Beto. Yeah.
Beto. So you were kind of like part of that, and then once this UST thing happened, then Grande, you came on, kind of. Is that timeline correct?
Um, yeah, I don't, Ty, you were not necessarily officially with the company, right? You're just an athlete sponsor, but did some side test pilot work, it sounds like.
I guess
Yeah.
that's what I
And
mean.
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then he'd been away from pole vault for quite a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was still, I was kind of at the end of my competitive career when they contacted me at the end of the 2015 season.
Right. Yeah, that is really crazy to see that evolution, because it really has turned into something, that if you'd asked me 10, 12 years ago, like whenever I had those two at the pole vault
Mhm.
camp, I'd be like, there's not a chance in this world,
Mhm. Yeah.
and now it's really, really crazy to see how far it's come. So in the early days, whenever you were trying to onboard people to these new polls, like what was your pitch?
Grande.
So early on, it was, that kind of not too dissimilar from what I told you is that, these are poles that are made kind of by pole vaulters. Like we made them with what we know is important. We want them to be durable. We want them to have certain bend characteristics. And really overall, we want it to be consistent. Tide mentioned that, he had a couple of favorite poles, and I think everybody has that. And it took me, it didn't take me too long working with Earl and working those camps. Like you'd flex poles and they wouldn't be the same, even though the labels were the same. And you'd every kid, it's like you get 3 or 4 kids in a camp that were like, oh, like I do really well, and then I get to this one pole and
Right.
I can't use it. I'm like, but even though the numbers say it should be the next one, just things change. And I know now it could be a mandrel size, it could just be construction size, because it's easy to kind of cut corners for manufacturing purposes.
Right.
And so that was one thing that we emphasize is we want them to feel the same from the day you start. If you're, in 6th grade picking up a pole for the first time, you can stay on our pole and it's going to feel the same every single step of the way. And having
Right.
the engineering team and the resources to get like the mandrels, like Ty had said, and making sure you've got consistent jumps. I think we've done pretty good at having minimal um, jumps or gaps with the way our poles work. And so So that's kind of how we went at it. And then the other thing, we knew that it's going to be hard to get a guy that's jumping 19 feet, 19 and a half feet to make a change. And so
Right. Right.
we're like, let's get it to the guys that, if we can get them early, they're not going to want to change anything else, because we know they're the lightest, we know they're the easiest to carry, we know they're the smallest. You get them kind of on our poles, and then they go someplace else and have to carry a spirit pole or an all fiberglass pole, and we knew they're gonna hate
Right.
it. And so
Right.
that's kind of the other thing. We wanted to get good coaches that understood pole vault with clubs with young kids, um, and I think it's worked out. It's in the process of working out. And now we got guys that are at that top level, that we got them early and knew they
Right.
weren't going to want to change, because we felt we had the best product on the market.
Right. Right. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely come up quite a bit, and you made me a believer. I actually, whenever I was first talking with Brian about it, like I had not jumped in a long time, maybe like 6 years, something like that. And I was like, doggone it, man. He was like, man, they're really good polls, blah, blah, blah. He wasn't like being pushy or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I forget why we had gotten on the phone. Maybe we were talking about the podcast or something. And he was like, and I was like, I wish I could have just jumped on him. Like I just, just so that, and he was like, hey man, I can send you some out. And I, and I was like, for real? And he was like, yeah. I was like, all right, let's do it. So he sent him
Yeah.
out. And because it's gonna be hard as I get older, in my career. Um, you know, I want to be able to recommend something that I've felt. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Because it's hard to
Yeah.
be like, yeah, that's the best poll. Yeah. And it's like, how do you
Yeah.
know? Like, like
Yeah. And that
well,
was, I think, something good too early on, especially early on. We had a pretty long leash and a pretty good budget to send people polls to try, kind of risk free.
right,
Give me your kids, your best kids, give me a range. We'll send you 10 polls that, 10 of your best athletes can use. And if you don't like them, no sweat. We'll pay you to ship them back.
right.
And we knew that it was, from our end, pretty low risk, because we felt pretty strongly they were going to like them.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that if you're confident in the product, then it's like, it is pretty low risk. So Ty, what is your involvement now, like currently
Yep.
with Essex?
So when Grande was full on sales with Essex, he started school, and I stepped in, and he and I worked together for a few years there and made some magic happen. But then when he started school, he had to step back a little bit. So I kind of stepped up my time commitments to Essex, and really, kind of running the sales side of things. And then Moonshine and Mike Vanny, Brian Monshine, I call him Moonshine. And we just kind of like fill in our niches, like our little roles, we like, I don't know, we just fit well together, and kind of work our strengths into each other's weaknesses. Like we just fit well together. And Brian has been a massive, I think, help in what he brings to the table. And
Yeah,
Grande still contributes, even though he's in medical school and doing the things that he's doing as a doctor now. Like,
right.
he still contribute whenever we need some high level information, or like, hey, how should we approach this? We call Grande. He's like the doctor. You go to the doctor for the problem, right? And he fixes the problem. And I mostly now, I've kind of more or less backed out of a lot of the day-to-day sales stuff that Brian does and Mike does, and I'm more help the elite athletes. So I'm mainly just helping the elites, and then I answer a lot of the emails still, and I do help some of the sales. People will call me, and usually to like troubleshoot. So like a dealer will call and say, "Oh, my my shipment's lost in somewhere. I can't find it, and we'll help track it down. Yeah, there's shipping and logistics is like just a nightmare, and it's becoming more and more challenging with pole vaulting, like internationally. Like rent. So now we have this great team, like Lars and Renz. Don and I flew over to Europe and met with a bunch of folks and landed on Lars and Renz to run Essex Europe, and that's been an amazing addition to the team, and they're starting to kill it. It's going to really neat. It's going to be neat to see how they open up Europe and introduce them to Essex.
Right.
And then like Hiroshi over in Japan has done, like he found, it's amazing. Like that kid, he's unbelievable. And he has a team. He's like developed a team and is working with our UST Japan division to bring poles to Asia. And it's just like, wow, this team is just like working really well together. And yeah, it's been a fun little ride, but mostly I'm just doing elite stuff and then some emails and like troubleshooting.
Right. Right. Where do you guys see Essex in the next 10 years? Do you still see yourselves? So one of the things that I like about Essex is they make pole vaulting poles. That's what they do, is they make pole vaulting poles.
That's right.
And
Mhm.
it's just, and that is one thing that I enjoy about that is just the the focus on that, the focus on the product of just the singular pole vaulting pole product, basically. And then I also enjoy that whenever I'm talking with people, like I'm talking with Brian Monshine, who I vaulted with, like after college and competed against, and then I talk with Jeremy Scott and Tye Harvey, and like these are all like kind of household names in the pole vault world, and I enjoy that. So I wonder though, how does the future of Essex look? Do you guys stay? It's hard to predict, but I just am curious about where the direction you guys are going is.
Yes. So I'll start with that one. So the relationships that we've developed and the partnerships with like Richie, for example, Stephen Griffey
Mhm.
at Richie, um, really speak to, I think, our future. Like he does pits exceptionally well.
They're
Like Richie
so good.
pits,
We've
they're
got
so
one.
good. Yeah, and they're durable and they're great landing systems. And so like he does that. Like that's what he does, right? And he does it
Right.
really well. And it doesn't make a sense for us to start importing pits or like building pits or anything. Like that's a whole nother model and stuff. And we're we're focused on like one of the facts that blew my mind when Don was introducing me to the new USTSX was like, yeah, we buy like a 40-foot container full of carbon every month, and it goes to our, you know, carbon. Like that's football fields of carbon, right?
Yeah.
Like crazy amount, and like we work in composites, and we do fiberglass and carbon fiber composite material, and that's what we do. Like to me, like you do that and you do it well, and that's like the focus. When you start getting spread thin, it becomes more of a challenge. And so that's the model, and I think that's what I see continuing into the future is partnering with people who do their thing really well,
Right.
and letting them do that thing, and then we're going to keep doing our thing, and let's work together to like Richie, Stephen will send out a kit to a school, and he'll include poles, Essex poles with it, exclusively Essex poles, because he really loves that we're doing Essex poles, and that's all we do.
Right. Right. Jeremy, what do you think?
I was gonna use that reference too. I mean, that's kind of been the thing is, I mean, I think we're gonna keep continuing to grow, like Ty said, that Lee's really kind of, we're constantly trying to evolve our not necessarily evolve, but make our manufacturing more efficient. We built and added ovens, feel like almost every year for the last 3 or 4 years. And we still or I feel like we've got a good design, but that doesn't mean we can't continue to look at new materials and better ways of doing things while keeping the basic principles of what we want it to feel like and keeping things consistent and having something that you can build off. That was kind of one of the hard parts early on, is, you know, we changed flex systems and getting things to all, like, what do we have and how do we marry these different lines of poles. And so I think kind of improving manufacturing to where we're a little more efficient and continuing to grow. But I think at the heart of it, we're always going to be pole vaulters that are trying to get the best equipment out. And, you know, we want to make an impact, right? I mean, there's only so
Right.
many ways you can do that in pole vault. So I think, at least for mine, I can't speak for Tye, but we've talked about this um, um, before personally, that, like, this is a great way for us to help other people um, get better equipment, more consistent poles, that and kind of pay back a sport that we've done that's done so much for us both personally and professionally.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you guys are doing an incredible job. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to chat about or cover before we get off here?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Uh-oh. Keeps cutting
Uh,
out.
oh,
Tye, you're
am I
breaking
cut?
up a
There
little
we
bit.
go. There we go. You're good now.
Okay, maybe it's I was fiddling with my little plug connector for my headset. Is that better? Can you hear
Yeah,
me now?
yeah, yeah.
So I want to say something about a good friend who just passed
Oh
and
no.
meant a lot to the pole vault community.
Oh,
Tim Lobinger, and I have very fond memories of uh, of meeting Tim and him just inviting me into the German mix and being such a like a big part of that community over there. So many good memories, and he always had just this huge smile and this just bigger than life kind of aura about him, and everybody looked up to him in Germany. I mean, of course they had their little things, right, and like we all do, but ultimately such great respect for that guy, and huge loss. Makes me very sad, and I think about all the people that are really close to him over there suffering and through his loss, and so just yeah, shout out to Tim and what he's meant to the community.
yeah. I had posted something on Instagram about I had actually reached out to him maybe a couple years ago to see if I could get him, if he wanted to talk on the podcast or whatever, and have that. And that was one of the people that I was really, hoping that I would be able to talk to. Just because I grew up watching him and all those things, and that was yeah, it's just really sad. And I forgive me, but what happened? Like, did he have like cancer or something, or
Yeah, he had a leukemia, I believe, leukemia or lymphoma,
okay.
blood cancer.
Ugh.
But
And I
he,
understand that he was actually doing pretty well more recently, but then he developed like a lung infection,
Ugh,
and yeah, that was what got him, I think.
that's terrible.
yeah, but I mean, I mean, I didn't get to compete, or probably didn't know him as well as Tye did, but I think that I'll give you one story about him. I mean, I went over there. I was still pretty early on. It's only maybe my second or third time competing in Europe, and my poles got lost. Um, and we made a few calls, and he had an extra set of poles. His agent got a hold of him. He was already on the way to this meet that we were competing at, and he said, I'll go back and get mine. So he turned around, went and got them from, at that point, I think it was still Leverkusen. He may have been down in Munich by that point, but he turned around and went and got them, and then came and, like, brought them to the meet for me and let me use them for the rest of my trip there. And I was trying to figure out a way to get him at the end of my trip, and he's like, "No, I'll come and get him." And then he gave me a ride to the airport, like,
Oh my
just
gosh.
like he's at this point, 6 meter man, world champion, and I just starting to break in on some of the circuit stuff, and Like that's
Wow.
how he was treating me, and just always, like
Yeah.
Ty said, always the big smile and just a big personality and just hilarious, a hilarious
Yeah.
guy, but would go out of his way literally for you to kind of, I mean, he knew how hard we had it with the travel, and I mean, it just was, he
Yeah.
left a big impression on me. Let's put it that way. Early on in my professional career.
Yeah, a lot of
Yeah.
people, it sounds like, that's just so sad. You just, I don't know. It's sad stuff
Yeah.
happens, in this world, and it's just hard. You have somebody that was a 6 meter pole vaulter and then, dies young like that. It's like you're at the peak of what a human can do, and then,
Mm-hmm.
that happens. It's just really sad. But yeah. So anyway, yeah, yeah. Rest in peace, Tim Lobinger, and yeah, he won't ever be forgotten. He's on that 6 meter list, so I mean
Yeah.
that's a really good thing to be on, man.
Man.
That's a really good thing to be on. But
Yeah.
anyway, is there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about before we got off here?
Man, I would love to. This podcast has got me thinking about all the people in my
Yeah,
life that have, touched me in some way. And
yeah.
like, I remember like Karen Locke taking a chance on me as her first pole vault. She was my manager, my manager, and like I remember her like taking like just a huge step into the unknown with me, and it turned out great. And she still manages pole vaulters, the best in the world, and she
Oh
does
yeah.
Oh
an
yeah.
amazing job. And then Mark Ozenberg, like, man, and like Lars introducing me to his coach at the time, who became my manager for a minute, and like the whole everybody that's, and then like the most important thing in my whole track career that happened is I met my wife. It's
Yeah.
like holy cow! Like I have kids and a wife because of track and field and pole vault, and like
Yeah.
that's the most important thing that's ever happened to me, and it's because track led us to that moment at World Championships where she pinched my butt in an interview, and that
Hey.
like lit the fire, right? Like Kelly Suttle was a part of that. Like she's like, yeah, she was egging my wife on. So probably she wouldn't have done it had it not been for Kelly. But
That's
man, it's just like
hilarious.
my whole life has been enriched.
It's really cool. To be honest with you, I feel very, very fortunate being in the position that I'm in. We have our facility, the Rise Pole Vault Training Center, and we work with so many kids. And I was talking with somebody the other day about how I feel so fortunate because there'll be a kid that comes in like, hey, I'm a senior. Somebody told me that I should pole vault, like, and it's like, is there, you think, I should do this? And then we take them, and then like 6 months later, they're getting like Division I scholarship offers. And it's just like their path through life was going this way, and then all of a sudden, boom, just gets kicked off this way. And it's like that just completely changed everything for you. Like
Yeah,
6 months ago, you didn't even know what the pullout was. And then
Mhm.
now you have this thing that you've been introduced to, and now your life is going to go off in a whole different way. And the coolest part is whenever you get a kid that, you can just kind of tell didn't have as much going for them,
Mhm.
and then it's like, it's just so cool. It is really wild when you look back on, both you guys can look back on your lives and I can look back on my life and just be like, wow, like pole vaulting legitimately is my livelihood right now. My job right now is to try and make a really cool pole vaulting experience for a bunch of kids, and to put out these podcasts and to, do all those sorts of things. And it is really wild how the little sport of pole vaulting has done so much for in everybody's lives, you know. And I just believe in it a lot. you know, I just believe in it. Like, it's like everybody that I talk to and I say what I do for my living, they're like, oh, you know, the initial thought is just like, that is the dumbest. This kid, he must be freaking stupid. And I don't know. I think that's part of the chip that's always been on my shoulder, though. Like, I'm not trying to say this like to be cocky or anything, but like I could have been a football player. I could have been a basketball player. I could have been anything that I wanted to be, and I probably would have been pretty good at it. But I chose pole vaulting, you know, and every time that I would tell somebody, well, I do this, you know, they'd be like, oh, you don't play football or you don't play basketball, you know, it's like, well, it is what it is, you know. We, you know, always getting the short end of the stick on who gets field house time and, you know, all of these things. And I'm still coming up against, you know, whenever we went to go put our bid in to lease this property, you know, you know what's coming because they're going to ask you what you're doing. I want to start a pole vaulting gym here. They're like, you can't make enough money to do that. You can't make enough money to pay for this rent. I'm like, give me a freaking chance, man. Give me a freaking chance and I'll show you what we can do. You know, I'll show you what this community can do, because what you guys are talking about, what Tye was talking about, and is a community that might be stronger than some of those other sports. Those other sports might have popularity, but I don't know if they have the same community. Like our community is really strong, you know. That's what's so powerful about it.
You're affecting thousands of kids' lives in a very profound way, Jake, with what you're, you know, with what's going on. And like, that is like, what more could you ask for in life than to have an impact? And we're making massive impacts on these kids' lives, you know, and a shout out to our elite athletes like Sam Kendricks. What sport, what professional sport in this world has Olympic medalists, American record holders, the best in the world, accessible? Mondo, he's accessible. Like, holy, where else is that going to happen, right? And like, and it takes pole vaulters to be with other pole vaulters to be successful. It's not a sport you can just do. You know, it takes a village, right? And like, it's a dangerous thing. It can be risky. So like, there's that element of like, hey, I need somebody's help to catch my steps so I don't monkey roll or end up on my head. Like the community has to help each other. And it's like this communal thing. And man, it's like our elite athletes are incredible. Like Sam Kendricks, he does so much for the sport. And Chris Nielsen. And, you know, I mean, the list is, it's unbelievable. We're so fortunate at Essex also to have this incredible group of elite athletes.
Really incredible group.
Like Katie Najat, oh my God, these athletes are just killing it. And they're so accessible and doing things for the community. And it's like, just to pay it forward is immense. And it's pretty neat to be a part of all that.
It is absolutely outstanding. Gentlemen, it's been a really awesome time. Is there anywhere that Tye, I do follow you on Instagram, and I love watching your your architectural videos. I really do. I love whenever a new Tye Harvey build gets posted up on
He's
Instagram.
Awesome, isn't he?
Yeah,
Thanks,
it's so cool. Yeah, so if you're interested in that, what is that Instagram handle, Tye?
Tye Harvey Enterprises.
Tye Harvey Enterprises. And then Jeremy, do you do the social media thing, or do you
do a little bit? I think it's more for watching my wife post pictures of my own kids.
Right.
But El Grande USA is my Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. I know this was a big chunk of your day, and I really enjoyed the conversation. And so thank you guys so much for coming on.
Thank you for having us on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, super fun to take those memories and kind of bring them forward. You know, they were getting dusty back there a little bit, so it's fun, really fun. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And this is the One More Jump podcast. See you guys later.